Man, remember when Superman liked being Superman? Crazy. There's a lot going on with DC movies and shows recently, even if it seems like it's been a quiet year. I just finished season 2 of My Adventures as Superman, and I loved it. I also finished Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3 from the Tomorrowverse, and controversially, I liked it. But it did have me thinking about the future of DC and the James Gunn of it all. So let's get into it. Let me start by gushing about My Adventures as Superman.
Actually, before I start, hi, future editor Jason here. I'm going to be popping up throughout the video to add in things I either forgot to mention or, since these videos take so long for me to edit due to a poor work-life balance, things that have come up that I think are relevant between now and the filming of the video. So think of it like a bad pop-up video from the 90s. Fuck, I'm old.
If you haven't seen it, My Adventures with Superman is an anime-inspired take on Superman currently on Max. Season 1 shows the origin of Clark Kent becoming Superman in a very sweet way and falling for his fellow rookie reporter Lois Lane. If you're familiar with Superman at all, it's nothing completely new, and yet the hopeful vibes and the bright visuals were just what I needed in dark times. That, plus some of the small twists to the lore, were just enough to really make me fall in love with the show over the course of the first season, and Season 2 only leaned into those things more. Writing a review for something like this is always kind of hard because there's not much else to say except it's really good.
The same goes for Batman Cape Crusader, by the way. I probably should just make a whole video on that show, but the gist of my review would be, it's great. The creators really show off their deep understanding of the Batman characters by bending them enough without breaking them and changing what's at the core of the character and keeping that intact. Something I think you can only do with 30 years of experience doing it, Bruce Timm, but you know, good job. It was a really good show. I should just make that video. Fuck. Add that to the list.
It sometimes gets a little too corny and kind of saccharine for me, but that's less a dig at the show and more because I'm a bitter old man. This kind of Superman story is exactly the kind I want to see. One where he saves the day not just with his fist, although the fight scenes are fantastic, but by just being a good dude. He solves problems heart first. His tragedy in this show is while he wants to be human, he knows he's not. And he's scared not just of what he might have come from, but of not being accepted by those he loved, which is about as human as it gets. In the second season specifically, while I didn't love the characterization of Brainiac, I did love the idea of him being a rogue AI, built to wage war, and when his creators started to not desire to wage war anymore, he destroyed them. It's a good thing we aren't arming AI-powered robots or anything. That'd be dumb. That choice also leads to having a brainwashed Supergirl be the villain, a twist I thought worked really well. I can't wait to see more of her in the future, if there is more coming, which we will get to in a second. Overall, it felt nice to have a lighthearted time watching Superman be a light to humanity, chill with his friends, and navigate normal human stuff, just with superhuman shenanigans thrown in to muck up the works. On the other end of the spectrum, I also finished the third and final part of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the big finale of the animated continuity known as the Tomorrowverse. Let me tell you, folks on the internet absolutely hate the Tomorrowverse. And I don't get it. Is it perfect or as good as the animated universe that came before it? No, but that is a bit of an unfair comparison. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start by talking about the three-parter first. Of the three parts of Crisis, this part comes a close second to the first, if that makes sense. Its flaws are the flaws I have with the whole of the Tomorrowverse, so I'll instead talk about the ending, which I liked a lot. I don't normally go for the big cosmic stuff in comics or comic book movies. At a certain point, it just gets too far out there to make sense to me, usually losing the plot a bit. One second, everyone is teaming up to save the multiverse for some big monster, and the next thing you know, Superman is blown into some cosmic bugle or some shit. It's just not for me. But this flick, eventually, made it pretty clear what happened. Constantine broke the one universe into a million by essentially killing baby Space Hitler, and the only way to fix it was to condense it back down into one universe. After trying literally everything else, I mean, can you imagine being the normal person on one of these Earths, just teleporting in and out of space and time every few months? And it seemed they were still going to work, which is wild to me. I'm really never going to get to retire if that's how this place works. I thought it was a really neat and tidy creative way to end the continuity. But let's talk about those flaws. Where this movie and the whole of the Tomorrowverse in general fell short for me wasn't in the animation style, which grew on me after a movie or two. I think the main fatal flaw was the lack of focus on one character at a time. Starting in Man of Tomorrow, in which a Superman story is suddenly spread into a shared story with Martian Manhunter, all the way to Crisis, which at times feels aimless as it floats between the perspective of Supergirl, Psycho Pirate, and Constantine.
I get why they did it with this particular trilogy, and I overall like the execution. I just wish the handoff between movies was a little bit smoother, and like Supergirl continued in the second movie instead of just dropped off. That's all.
Every movie in the Tomorrowverse, save one, The Long Halloween, is about multiple characters. Green Lantern has Adam Strange, Supergirl has the Legion in the future, Warworld is basically 3 short films. It never really goes deep enough. The reason I love the DCAU is because they spent 7 years telling stories that built up a deep love of each character. In the end, this rush to the end of the multiverse may not have even been the filmmaker's fault. There are 10 movies spread over just 4 years for the Tomorrowverse. That breakneck pace I can't help but feel comes from the incoming change in leadership. Don't get me wrong, I'm very excited to see what James Gunn does with DC, and all signs point to me loving his Superman, for all the reasons I love my adventures with Superman. But it definitely feels like the Tomorrowverse had a tight wrap-up to make room for all the new, completely connected DC universe, and it suffered for it.
I am excited for Creature Commandos, though. I just wish it was a movie and not a show.
Now, if I could talk to just James Gunn, talking to you, James, I'd only hope to remind him, or tell him if he doesn't already know, that the animated teams behind these movies have been churning out good or great animated movies for 20 plus years, all while the live action movies, and let's call it like it is, sucked ass. In fact, they were sometimes so good that it made it even more frustrating that the live action counterparts were so bad. It seemed to me so obvious that you should be able to just tell the stories in the way the animated universe is doing, but with real people. It's right there. So I hope Mr. Gunn is talking to these creatives and is keeping them around to make more movies. Hell, give them a promotion and let them write a live action movie.
The same goes for comic book writers. I think it's a no-brainer to bring in a bunch of people who write these characters literally for years to come to a movie. And to his credit, I think James Gunn's doing that with like Tom King, but, well, Tom King is a whole other can of worms, so.
They deserve it for carrying DC stories through some real dark times. But I'm just some nerd who loves these characters probably a little too much since I cried at the end of my adventures with Superman, and just desperately wants the world to see them in all their glory. But what did you think? Am I wrong about the Tomorrowverse? Are you excited for what's next from DC? Let me know about it below, and I'll see it next time. And as always, death to the algorithm.